Welcome to our lifestyle segment right here on New Day, and we are discussing workplace coercion. Of course, the lifestyle segment is brought to you by Lipton Tea, the world's #1 tea brand. Now, before we even get started, just want to give you a bit of a background of what workplace coercion is. I guess generally being asked to do things outside of your official work duties, and sometimes maybe you may have a boss or somebody in higher authority who is asking you to do things which you know legally or maybe morally is incorrect, but a lot of times you may feel threatened and not have the voice to speak up. We're going to be learning a little bit more about workplace coercion and also what are your rights as an individual working for a person or an organization if you feel like you have been coerced to do something you don't want to do. And joining me right now, I have with me Benjamin Arthur, who is an alternative labor management practitioner and also a civil engineer, and he joins me right now. Good morning.
Good morning, Amari. Good morning to all your cherished viewers.
Thank you very much. Now, I tried my little best to explain what I think workplace coercion is. I don't know if I did it justice. Can we hear from you how
this was more or less a general approach, but from the labor approach, workplace coercion involves the application of force, intimidation, or threat to obtain a compliance or to get a task undertaken, usually against the will of the person, for illegal or for some unconscionable ends. Usually these are some of the issues that we look at under workplace coercion, but there is a need to make a great distinction between workplace coercion and the normal pressures, influences and inducements that we have. Coercion is quite different from the normal pressure and influence from the degree of the pressure. So sometimes there's a thin line between what we call influence or inducement and what we might term as coercion. So there's a need to draw that distinction. Okay,
I want to just kind of draw a line in between maybe a corporate organization, and there's so many other different types of work, whether you're working in and the blue collar workers, if you want to call it that. We usually within a corporate organization, you enter and they'll give you what your duties are. You have your work duties, it's clearly outlined. You're expected to do X, 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 da 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 da. So if you feel, and if you have a good HR in the company, if you feel that somebody is giving you undue pressure, which can be termed as coercion, I'm sure you can go through the HR route, it can get resolved. But yet in Ghana, we have so many other different types of work where there's usually no job title. You just need a job, you get it. And if then your boss is telling you to do certain things you don't want to do, a lot of times people have fear. Because right now, I'm thinking about the economy we're in. People will just shut up and do it. What are the rights, not so much of the corporate organization, but those, I'm just talking about the average person, maybe you're a mate, maybe you're a seamstress, you're a hairdresser, whatever, your madam or whoever, it's go and do things which you know clearly, I'm a hairdresser, I shouldn't be doing these things. What is one supposed to do?
From your initial statement, you made the remark that it's more or less pervasive in Ghana.
Oh,
and
yes.
I can tell you that it's a very sensitive topic we are discussing, even though we hardly hear of it. It's very pervasive in Ghana.
But I've seen people slap employees and talk to them all sorts of ways.
If you go into public sector, especially in political appointments, and then when it comes to even journalism, sometimes you want to ask whose story is told and for whose ends. So sometimes you could be asked to report on a case and twist it probably the way that the managers or the editors and the rest find it suitable. So coercion goes on in various forms, and it's very pervasive, almost from the top down. We can find it everywhere. But thank God we have a legislation that guides workplace coercion. And for purposes of your viewers, let me quote, under the fundamental principles of state policy, Article 36, and I quote, the state shall encourage participation of workers in the decision-making process at the workplace. What it means, that coercion basically has to do with a situation where normally the individual has not been involved in that decision or does not accept that decision. So what the Constitution tells us is that the worker must be involved or must participate in taking such decisions. And then when we talk about the fundamental human rights and freedoms, also under Article 16, it states, no person shall be held in slavery or servitude. And coercion in extreme forms can be described as forced labor, servitude, or working under duress. So when you hear some of these terms, we are talking about virtually the same thing. And then 16 clause 2 also talks about no person shall be required to perform forced labor.
Forced labor,
except for a court sentence or order, discipline in a security environment, or labor required in war periods. These are emergency situations, or under normal communal labor, or for civic responsibility's sake. There are several of them, but let me quote one more, also from the same constitution, Article 24. It says that every worker has the right to work under satisfactory and safe and healthy conditions, and shall have equal pay for equal work without distinction of any kind. So if you look at our constitution, we have enough legislation for that. Under Labor Act is very, very, very superb.
Okay.
And that is where we see the core definition of coercion, the forms and effects, all under the Labor Act.
All right, I mean, Benjamin, I'm obviously hearing this for the first time. Now, I'm thinking of, case in point, somebody who's a house help. Usually when you get a house help duties, when you're a house help, there's so much unclear arenas because you're in a house, maybe you're helping a family, you're getting paid, but I know, as I said, I've seen some people shout, abuse house helps and so forth, getting them to do things maybe they don't want to. But these house helps will never know about this labor thing, this Labor Act. If somebody finds themselves in a situation, I said they're not, in a nice office, air-conditioned office, whether they're a mechanic, whatever, what can they do where they feel like they have been put under coercion to do? Most of the time, I'm sure there's fear, but if that person has, is strong enough, what can they do? How can they exercise these rights?
Normally, what must happen in a formal, I'm generalizing
yes,
it,
of course,
the formal employment. Normally, when coercion becomes pervasive at the workplace, it connotes two things under the labor law, under sections 11G and 11H. What it basically means is that the duty of an employer to open channels of communication is blocked entirely or half blocked. Let me say partially blocked. It also means that the employer is not protecting the interest of the worker, because if you read the Labor Act 11H,
yes,
you are supposed as an employer to protect the interest of the worker. But when it comes to labor issues, normally it has to do with some of the things that has been legislated, that don't do this, don't do this. And specifically, if you don't mind, I would like to read for us, just to clarify some of these points.
Okay.
Sections 116 of the Labor Act 651, and then 117, quickly. A person shall not be required to perform forced labor. It is an offense for an employer to exact or cause to be exacted or permitted to be exacted for his or her benefit forced labor from any worker. Then subsection 3. Any employer convicted of an offense under subsection 2 is liable to a fine not exceeding 250 penalty points. So it's even a criminal offense to go that extreme. Then interpretation of what forced labor or coercive labor or whatever you might choose to call it, let's say working under duress, means. It interprets that in this part, forced labor means work or service that is exacted from a person under threat or a penalty, or for which that person has not offered himself or herself voluntarily, but does not include what I had, enumerated earlier on.
I mean, I'm just trying to get the answer in terms of what can you, the individual, do if you feel that, because obviously the laws are in place, but what do you do initially? Do you call the police? Do you go to court? Knowing most people cannot afford to take these things up in court. I'm talking about the average person.
Sorry for cutting in. The first place to call is to make a complaint to the National Labour Commission.
That's what I wanted to get to.
That is the first place.
And how do we get to the National Labour Commission?
You pick a form. The unfortunate thing is that we don't have the National Labour Commission, outfit nationwide. Distributed nationwide.
It's even only in the
Act,
capital.
Yes, the Act makes provision for even having it at the district level. That's the only sad news about it. But you pick a form, make a complaint. If it has to do with human rights abuses and the rest, you obviously have to go to Shraj and other places. If it has to do with criminal offense, as it's been stated,
yes,
you go to the police. For example, during strike, if anybody uses physical force or violence against a worker or an employer or against any property, it becomes a criminal offense. So
but you said it is a very sensitive area. It happens all often. So many employees, especially in the non-formal sector, really talk to the employees anyhow, slap them. As I've even witnessed people like going wild at them, and nothing ever comes to it. It just becomes like, oh, give it to God, whatever, purely because of the poverty gap. You brought up something. The Labour Commission there's only provisions in Accra. So what happens to those in the north and in the Ashanti region and all the other region, the Bronghafa, wherever? What happens to them? How do they? If you have a complaint, are you supposed to come to the capital?
That's a big challenge we have, and for which reason certain groups of people embark on some kinds of strike that ordinarily it doesn't have to occur. For example, if you're a nurse and you have been forced to do certain things you don't have to do, you want to lodge a complaint, where do you go? I quite remember an incident where a nurse was slapped in the Tamale Teaching Hospital.
By who?
Not to mention here.
Okay, no, so I'm just like, was it a senior staff?
Was
it a patient or another staff?
Let's leave it this way.
No, I'm just trying to identify.
If I may go to my point.
Okay.
A nurse was slapped. Wanted to make a complaint, a formal complaint. There was no outfit there to make a formal complaint, so it became a gossip among the nurses. And before we got to know of it, other nurses had taken up the issue, and it became a nationwide strike. So coercion at the workplace is a very sensitive topic that we are discussing, and to me this is the first place I've heard it discussed. It's very, very, very important to this nation.
I'm hoping that, time wouldn't allow, but I would love to open the phone lines to hear what some people go through, but maybe this is something we'd have to do another time, because I'm sure a lot of people will have some things they would want to share. Alternative dispute resolution, that's something that you're usually involved in. Just giving me some example of cases where you've been involved in trying to resolve in terms of workplace coercion.
I have had several cases, but let me just give us two, and they are all under the Labour Act. I wasn't using the law then because I had to more or less assist them to negotiate. There is one that prohibits a pregnant woman from night work. So even if you are an employer and you coerce a pregnant woman to work at night, and night specifically is defined as from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Wow, I've seen nurses working pregnant.
It's not allowed.
Okay, can you just repeat that? Under our Labour Act, no person who's pregnant woman should be working for nights.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
No, it's not allowed. Under Section 55 1A, the Labour Act. And then let me go ahead. That unless with a pregnant woman's consent, it is also not legal to force or coerce her, especially a mother with a child of less than 8 months, to do overtime. It's also not allowed. And it's again not allowed unless it's been approved by a medical officer or midwife that a pregnant woman who has crossed the 4th month of pregnancy, that you can assign the person outside the person's residence or where the person was originally employed. It's not allowed. So these are very, very, very big issues that we have ignored. And
so I've been in hospitals where I've seen nurses who are pregnant working the night shift. I've seen this. This is my own personal life.
It's not in the spirit of the Labour Act.
So most people, but then is it because most people are not aware that if they're pregnant they shouldn't be doing this? And also, let me just kind of clear a distinction. You said if a mother has a child under 8 months, they shouldn't be made to do overtime. But then if the person consents, so if she says, okay, I want to work, because some people are very go-getters, they want to work, that's not an issue. So now, somebody who finds himself in a position right now, they should go to report to the Labour Commission.
Make a complaint to the National Labour Commission. Let me go to the second example as I face in court. It had to do with a group of construction workers who were made to patronize services and products that the employer was selling. It's also against the spirit of the Labour Act under Section 71. And let me quote that one.
Okay.
Where an employer establishes a store for the sale of commodities to the workers or operate a service for them, the employer shall not coerce. The term is used in the Labour Act, shall not coerce the workers to make use of the store or service. In this particular case, what had happened was that the employer had gotten some people. The same employer had one leg in operating a restaurant and was forcing the workers
to go and
eat, and they were being deducted as source. And a group of them said, "Look, we don't like Nkrumah. We don't like this. We don't like this."
Wow.
So it became a very big issue. But this is what the Labour.
And it was not like some workplaces where they provide free canteen and food. If
it's free, it's up to you. But if you are coerced to
that
patronize
you must
it,
eat here and you're going to be not even pay for it, deducted.
I'm not saying this is the case here in TV3.
No, it's not.
But imagine that the authorities or the managers of TV3 have decided to operate, let's say, a grocery shop, and they made it compulsory that for you to be employed here, once you accept employment here, if you need a biscuit, that's where you have to. Wow. It's against.
Okay, so in that particular
situation,
for
your example.
No, it's fine. But in that particular situation with the employees being forced to purchase or eat in the restaurant, what was the resolution? I know what you sit both parties down, and you have discussions. What was the outcome?
Initially, I spoke to the two of them, the two groups differently, and they got to reason that, look, even if you've made it compulsory, it's not everyone who wake up at that time and eat as and when you are serving it. We have meal breaks, and meal breaks to some extent does not necessarily mean that go and eat. Probably I want to rest. So these were some of the issues that, look, we are at liberty to buy what we enjoy.
You have the freedom to.
We don't want you to do deductions. Give us our monies.
We will choose what to spend it on.
What to buy, and these were basic rights of workers. So it got well.
Okay.
And I pray that some of these issues.
I mean, it's interesting the things which are coming to light.
But Amma, if I may chip in this, there's one huge area that coercion goes on, and when it comes to collective bargaining at the workplace. Let's look at POTAG, not to go into the issue because it's in court. If POTAG embarks on strike like they have done, and the employer wants to pay, but they are all in negotiation, you realize that if it happens to be illegal strike, there has been an amount of coercion. Even if it's legal, there's an amount of coercion. If an employer embarks on a lockout, employers don't go on strike. There's the equivalent is lockout. So when employers embark on lockout, it also sometimes constitutes a kind of coercion. We are supposed to negotiate in good faith under Section 97. But anything aside negotiation in good faith, it's likely to result in coercion, and that's what we have.
Our time is short. I had wanted to touch on also, especially something I hear a lot of from a lot of females, sexual coercion from the employees saying that. Employers saying that, okay, if you want this job, hey, you must do these things. Yeah, so I mean, this is. I'm hoping we can continue this next time, and hopefully next time we have more time to open the phone lines and hear from our viewers what they think about this. I want to say a big thank you to Benjamin Arthur, who is an alternative labour management practitioner and civil engineer. Of course, our lifestyle segment is brought to you by Lipton, the world's #1 tea brand. Make sure you don't go anywhere. There's more coming up right here on New Day.